Hi, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I wanted to tell you congrats on your Ace Eddie win.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
One of the things that I really enjoy about this short is really just examining this meaning of life. And one of the first things that I wanted to ask you is what do you think it is about that question that draws, it's kind of like this crazy like warped meaning for everyone else, and I think the film really does a great job of explaining that it has a different meaning for each different person. But I want to know, for you, have you ever struggled with the meaning of life?
Oh, daily, daily, yes, and especially now. I mean, so that's it exactly. I mean, everybody has their own ideas about that, and hopefully, Soul the movie and the short too gets you thinking more.
Yeah, I mean, has it changed your outlook on life, working on Soul and now working on this short as well? Has that changed what that meaning is for you as you enter each project?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's the beauty of working on a Pete Docter. It seems I've worked on 3 Pete Docter movies, and every time it's coincided with certain aspects of my life. It's really amazing. And maybe that's not coincidental. That's just the way you know, his movies do that. So yeah, as I get older, obviously the meaning of life becomes a heavier question. And this yeah, the Soul, working on Soul the feature, we had so many conversations about it and explored so many ideas that, yeah, it was very, very
Look,
thought provoking.
after watching Soul and after watching this short, I'm taken into a deep therapy session. I have to look within. I think I have the answers, and then I watch a short like this, and everything changes again. But I wanted to talk to you. You're mainly known for editing. You've done a short before. I want to know what that transition was like. What was it about directing that really pulled you towards it, especially how, as an editor, has that prepared you for this new role with this second short?
Well, firstly, I think I've had 15 years sitting watching one of the greatest directors direct, and I have a front row seat. So I've had like through osmosis, I've had this great film school. Um, and then editing at Pixar, we're so deeply involved in the process from beginning to end. I'm very familiar with most of the players. I work closely with story and with layout. I go to animation dailies every day and I get to see Pete Docter direct animators. So I felt fully prepared, especially coming in. I was still working on Soul when we started the short. So it's just like, for a first time directing at Pixar, it's probably the easiest transition for somebody.
Now, were there any challenges that you possibly faced? You've had this long career, especially working with Pixar, as you said, it's been such a great relationship. Were there any challenges that arose while directing the short?
For me, the biggest challenge is I had a great editor, Noah Newman, and I promised myself I wouldn't edit because I wanted to direct. And so I had to go from, when I edit, I have the freedom, to just do things, try things, and I don't really have to clarify what I'm thinking because I do it. It's sort of this process of trial and error and instinct. And so when you're directing, you actually have to tell somebody what you want. And there's this there's this time pressure to do it, and you don't have this. So that was a really good exercise for me.
Now, in the short, we really, while we're looking at this overarching theme of the meaning of life, we really get to learn a little bit more about 22 and really the meaning of loneliness and how
Yes.
being alone, it forces you to have to look within and figure out what you actually enjoy about yourself. And I wanted to ask you, how do you make sure that that's balanced? It's an issue that everyone deals with, from young children to even into adulthood. How do you balance all of that to make it palatable for the entire general audience?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of Pixar's specialty, isn't it? And especially Pete Docter. I mean, so once again, my sort of uh, I was fortunate to work with Pete all these years, and those are the questions we deal with daily when you're working on a movie there with him. And you start off with these big adult themes, and Pete is a kid at heart, and he really wants to include kids in his in his movies, and he loves animation, and so I just had this great education in this over the last year, a few years.
Now, also too, one of the things that really stood out to me while watching this, kind of our innocence and how as kids we view things as we talk about stealing or lying within the short,
Yeah.
how that really transforms into adulthood when we actually come in contact with people who shape us. Can you speak
Yes.
a little bit more about that and wanting to include that portion into the short?
Well, the one thing I've learned, especially on Inside Out and Soul, is the question always comes up about how much kids can handle. It's what it comes down to, and how will they be engaged. So on both movies, we halfway through the process, we did these little mini previews at work where we would bring in, employees would bring their kids in, and all, from 6 to 12 years old, say, and we'd run the movie. With Inside Out, we did it. And it was fascinating on Inside Out because we were really worried that kids just wouldn't get it, they wouldn't relate to it. And you're sitting there, usually you go to a movie with kids and there's a lot of movement in the theater, and just, it's hard to keep their attention. The Inside Out one, the kids were just, I was sitting next to these kids and they just, the whole time they're staring at the screen, and you're thinking, well, they're not really laughing, they're not really reacting, are they getting it? And then afterwards we do a little, like in a preview, a little focus group, and the kids could explain the movie. They were totally engaged. They understand so much more than we give them credit for. So, that's, again, just one of the lessons from working on the movies there that you get.
I love that you said that because one of the things that I've realized, in society, we sometimes we think that, especially when Soul came out, like, is this too dark for kids?
Yeah,
And I think sometimes we underestimate their emotional
yeah.
capabilities as children. Um, and I feel like after watching, especially Inside Out, but going into Soul and now with 22 versus Earth, that do you feel like this will change the conversations? This will change how we view children and how much they can handle and are capable of processing at a young age?
Yeah, that's a great point. That's exactly what I hope. And I think we're sort of doing it little by little in our in our way, to the extent that we have any influence. Um, yeah, I think it's really important I think kids are very curious about these things,
Yeah.
and trying to protect them from it, maybe we're doing them a disservice, and the sooner you have these open conversations.
Now, speaking of that, because we've talked about our emotions with Inside and Out, and we've explored the meaning of life and what our purpose is with Soul in the short. Are there any other topics or ideas that you would like to tackle in future
Oh,
projects?
yeah, I'm sure there are. Um, it's really hard to, these things come not off the top of my head, no, but yes.
Um, but I love that even though we're talking about these deep topics with the animation that we see, there's a sense of calmness, of peace, and warmth that we see throughout this Soul and also too throughout this short. How important is it to you when choosing the color scheme, the landscape of presenting this new world to the audience with such what people would call heavy topics?
Yeah. So yeah, a good example is that first scene when Joe's on the escalator going to the light. And that was the scene that, the first time I cut it, it was with really spooky mute, like just, I went as eerie as I could. And it was just, I don't even think Pete ever saw that version. It was like, there's just no way we didn't, the first year on our movies, it's a discovery of tone like that. Like, you have this very heavy topic, and how are you going to temper it so that it is, appealing, but also not scary, and especially
Right.
for kids. And you don't want it to be scary because you want to talk about death. You want to talk about death. You don't want to talk about death
Exactly.
being scary.
Hey, it made it more palatable for the adults as well because
Yeah,
I mean, health is such a topic that everyone struggles with and really having to reconcile that all of our lives come to an end at a point in time. So
right.
adults need the warmth as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. Yeah.
Now for the last question, I wanted to ask you, what message do you really want to leave with the audience, or even what questions do you want the audience to leave with after watching the short?
For me, it's more with all the movies I work on. It's not about having a message I want to impart. It's more about getting people to think. If I bring a little lightness to the world right now and get them to think about these subjects as they walk away, I'm really happy.
Well, I definitely walked away thinking, like I said, I have a whole nother internal therapy session to have after watching this short. But I wanted to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it, and I truly enjoyed your work.
Thank
God bless.
you.
Thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too.